Good afternoon and welcome to the July Ordinary meeting. Item 1, acknowledgement. We, Greater Shepparton City Council, acknowledge the Yorta peoples of the land which now comprises Greater Shepparton, and we pay our respect to their tribal elders. We celebrate their continuing culture and we acknowledge the memory of their ancestors. Item 2, privacy notice. This public meeting is being streamed live via our Facebook page and made available for public access on the website along with the official minutes of this meeting. All care is taken to maintain your privacy. However, as a visitor in the public gallery, it is assumed that your consent is given in the event that your image is broadcast to the public. It is also assumed that your consent is given to the use and disclosure of any information that you share at the meeting, including personal or sensitive information, to any person who accesses those recordings or minutes, and we do welcome members in the gallery this afternoon. Item 3, governance principles. Council considers the recommendations contained in the agenda give effect to the overarching governance principles stated in section 9.2 of the Local Government Act 2020. These principles are as follows. Councillors, they're listed 1 to 9 on page 6 of the agenda. Item 4, apologies. Councillors, do we have any apologies this afternoon?
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. Apology for Councillor Greg James. Not being able to be today.
Can I have someone second that, please? Hudson.
I'll second that, mate.
All in favour? Motion carried on opposed. Item 5, declaration of conflict of interest. Councillors, do we have any conflicts this afternoon? No. Item 6, confirmation of minutes of the previous meeting. Are there any items of the minutes opposed? No. Can I have a councillor please move that recommendation as a motion?
Yes, Sally, I'll move that the minutes of 25 June 2024 council meeting as circulated be confirmed.
Thank you. Can I have someone second that, please? Spinks. Councillors, all in favour? Councillor Summer? I'll do that again. Councillors, all in favour? Motion carried unopposed. Councillors, we go to page 8 of the agenda, item 7. I'll now hand over to CEO Fiona Legasic.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. The following public questions were submitted to Council in accordance with our governance rules, and the answers therein were provided by Council officers. First question relates to GB Link. What was the $9.6 million loan in this year's budget covering? New borrowings of 9.6 were included in the 24-25 adopted budget. These borrowings are planned to finance the construction of GB Link Stage 1 until income resulting from the land sales for the project will be received. This purpose is aligned with the appropriate use of borrowings as outlined in Council's borrowing policy. Second question relating to GB Link. Where will the rest of the funds come from the project? The cost of the project will be funded by a combination of land sales and grant funding. The loan principal for these borrowings is planned to be repaid with income resulting from the land sales from the project when they are received.
Thank you, Fiona. Item 8, deputations and petitions. There is one there under item 8.1, petition for improved facilities and services of villages in Greater Shepparton. There is a recommendation. Can I have a councillor put that forward as a motion? Councillor Ladson.
Thank you, Mayor Tharley. I'd like to move the recommendation on page 9 that the council receive and note the petition titled Petition for Improved Facilities and Services of Villages in Greater Shepparton in accordance with Governance Rule 81.
Ladson. Can I have a councillor second that motion, please? Councillor Summer. Councillors, all in favour? Motion carried unopposed. Councillors, we now go to page 10 of the agenda, item 9.1, which is Community Asset Committee Annual Report 2022/23. There is a recommendation. Can I have a councillor put that forward as a motion, please? Councillor Summer.
Thank you, Mayor Sally. I'll move that the council note the financial and performance statements of Council's 17 community asset committees for the 2022/23 financial year as attached.
Thank you. Councillor, second that motion.
Second that motion. Thank you, Mayor Sally.
Councillor Adam. Councillor Summer, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thank you. I'd like to thank all the 116 volunteers who helped manage our outlying facilities. It's taking much of the burden and putting ownership on people who these facilities affect directly, and it's been a real pleasure to read through what some of their achievements have been. And I note that there's a lot of transition from gas to split systems, but also a lot of future goals and other things that have been ticked off the list. So thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Summer. Councillor Adam, would you like to speak to the motion?
Just briefly, thank you, Mayor Sally. I'll just echo the words of Councillor Summer. Also to add, I think with our impending elections coming up in 2 or 3 months' time, with the new warded system, I think these committees are going to be more valuable than ever because they'll be advocating more, I think, strongly for their own particular region or zone. You've got so many there, and we've always taken on board their reports and their activities and their aspirations with genuine interest. I think it'll become more and more crucial that they put together doable actions, I suppose, things that we can achieve. And I think, as I said, new water system means that we'll be focusing on them more than we ever have in the past. So I congratulate their achievements. They've done a heap of work, as we can see there, and they're only going to be more relevant into the future.
Very good. Thank you, councillor Adam. Are there any councillors that would like to speak against the motion? Councillors like to speak for the motion. Councillor Brophy.
Thank you, Mayor Sally. Just in mention in regards to that, we saw a petition submitted in regards to one particular area asking for better amenities, etc. This is certainly one of the vehicles by which that can be achieved, because if you look at right across the municipality from Arcadia, Bumbartha, Central Park, Durrandall, Kingupna, Caramomas, Katandra West, as mentioned, Lennox, Tallygaroopna, etc. So many of these fantastic facilities, recreation reserves, they can be halls, and they also can be community centres. So I think they certainly provide vital cogs in our small communities, and terrific that
Thank you, councillor Brophy. Are there any other councillors that would like to speak to the motion? So any closing comments, councillor Summer?
No, thank you.
Councillors, vote all those in favour? Motion carried unopposed. Councillors, we go to page 18 of the agenda, item 9.2, Avenue of Flags consultation and engagement. There is a recommendation. Can I have a councillor put that forward as a motion, please? Councillor Summer.
Thank you, Mayor Sally. I'll move that in relation to the potential Avenue of Flags project, the council notes the outcome of embassy engagement, community consultation and consideration of alternative options for the public recognition of Greater Shepparton's diverse First Nations, migrant and refugee communities, not proceed with the proposed Avenue of Flags project or alternative options, continue to promote the use of the existing community flagpole in Queen's Gardens by our diverse communities.
Councillor Summer, can I have a councillor second that motion, please?
I'll second the motion. Thank you, Mayor Sally.
Councillor Summer, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Ms Sally. I'd really like to commend Councillor Dobson for putting forward this project. For me, it was quite surprising to see that he put that forward, because we know Councillor Dobson is a staunch Conservative who keeps a very keen and detailed eye on our budget. But nevertheless, and I don't want to speak on behalf of Councillor Dobson, but he must have thought an Avenue of Flags had enough social value to be of merit, and I somewhat agree. It's a lovely metaphor for a proud multicultural community that harmoniously coexists as easily as flagpoles standing beside one another. Although I did vote against this project at the time, but that was due to all the reasons listed in this report, I do sincerely hope that this project, or even associated projects that came up with consultations such as peace poles, can be resurrected by future councils, possibly in times of plenty. And I do hope that Councillor Dobson will be around to admire those, whatever shape they take.
Very good. Thank you, councillor Summer. Councillor Adam, would you like to speak to them?
Thank you, Mayor Sally. I hope Councillor Summer doesn't know something we don't. Yeah, look, it is a really great idea, and I congratulate Councillor Dobson for instigating the whole process about providing a report on this. If nothing else, I can see what the recommendation is, and there's lots of issues as to why the recommendation is to not proceed. There's financial concerns. There's obviously speaking with a lot of embassies around Australia. Some were interested, some were not. Then if they don't fund it, we'd have to fund it ourselves. There's ongoing costs with servicing and replacing flags over many years. So just pragmatically, it just wasn't possible. However, I think it's opened the door for other ideas that we can do to achieve the same outcome. We've got a fantastic SAM down the road here, which has got a nice big flat wall that we can project all sorts of images onto, and maybe during the year at different times we can project all the flags that may have been part of this initiative onto that. That's just one idea, but I'm sure a lot of other ideas will now be born from this. So I congratulate Councillor Dobson. Great idea. Anything that promotes our multicultural community, which is what we're very proud of and known for, I think is a positive. So whilst this is not a recommendation that I think Councillor Dobson embraces, he's actually lit the fuse for other greater ideas into the future.
Very good, thank you, councillor Adam. Are there any councillors that would like to speak against the motion? Speak against?
I certainly do.
Councillor Dobson.
As you'd expect me to, Mayor Sally, and I thank you. I appreciate the comments made by fellow councillors. I would imagine that if this project was taken up by a group of citizens within the Greater Shepparton area, private citizens, that this would occur. Because it's an issue that is not a 5-minute exercise. It's an issue that probably takes 5-10 years to get really mobile. And I envisaged that when I put the proposal up. I would have thought that getting half a dozen embassies at best in the first 12 or 18 months would have been a good outcome. And that would have been the start. Shepparton and the Goulburn Valley itself is a multicultural haven. And we don't celebrate it enough. We have pockets of citizens from different countries, but we don't seem to come together all that often as one harmonious community. And I would have thought that the avenue of flags could have been 50, because that's about how many different people from different countries there are within the Goulburn Valley. I would have thought that this would have been a gathering place for visitors to Shepparton, for relatives of people who have come to Shepparton and the Goulburn Valley and remained here and grown with the community, for them to show off what Shepparton means to them, a place to be proud of. And that was the sole purpose. I see some of the negatives that have been put into this report, expensive, divisive, tokenistic, all these sorts of words. That's not part of it at all. The whole thing was to show Victorians and Australians that Shepparton is a model community for multiculturalism. And I still believe that. And I would hope with the support of the words of the last two speakers that we can get somewhere. But certainly, as I said in my opening remarks, if this exercise had been undertaken by people in the private community, I believe it would have got up.
Very good, thank you, councillor Dobson. Are there any other councillors that would like to speak for the motion? Councillor Abdullah.
Thank you, and I support the motion and just want to share some thoughts, candid thoughts, I should say. The idea of having a flag avenue to honour diverse and multicultural and migrant communities is indeed a noble thought, and it's a positive step towards recognition. However, while such symbolic gestures are important, they can sometimes feel tokenistic, as was noted in our community consultation. And I believe that to truly support our diverse communities, we can and we should focus on more substantive actions, addressing their everyday needs and challenges. I believe the council has done a fairly good job of celebrating our multicultural communities through events and festivals and recognizing their culturally significant dates, etc. However, we need to move beyond these surface level efforts at this point in time. And I also feel that instead of using our very constrained and limited financial resources for more displays of pride, it's time for our leadership to address more serious issues that don't always require money, but they do demand a commitment to fairness, equity, and human rights. How can we achieve this? Some examples come to my mind. The council can enhance its support for multicultural communities by extending its offering of culturally and linguistically appropriate services and spaces. This could include creating safe and culturally safe and suitable spaces for women and men, for instance, to participate in sports and fitness activities such as swimming, other programs at its fitness centers. Additionally, our council and its leadership can also make a stronger impact by acknowledging the shared grief and trauma faced by many culturally diverse communities due to their lived experiences of war, starvation, invasions, and human rights violations across the globe. By recognizing the challenges our diverse and multicultural communities face, by engaging in conversations about their experiences, by actively combating racism and everyday unconscious biases, and honoring the diversity of cultures, thoughts, and sentiments within our community, I believe our council can make a more meaningful and lasting impact. And I hope that the council in future will be able to shift our focus to these vital issues and create an environment where every voice is heard and respected. This, I believe, will bring an unmatched sense of pride and belonging, fostering a more authentic celebration of multiculturalism in our region. So I fully support the motion. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Councillor Abdullah. Are there any other councillors that would like to speak to the motion? Councillor Brophy.
Thank you, Mayor Sarley. Firstly, we have had a pretty good, robust discussion about this for quite a period of time now. And many views have been expressed, and very most respectively too, so well done to everybody on that. Personally, I think that this particular report had missed the mark on the intent of what could be possible, on the positivity of it, and also in the genuine approach that it could have taken as well. Whilst appreciating that council staff have enacted what was requested of them by the council resolution, I feel that at a number of levels, the investment into establishing something positive for our community, indeed for our multicultural community, over the past 100 years here in the Golden Valley, plus, is an opportunity lost at this particular moment in time. We have an agricultural sector built on the back of strong immigration and migration to this particular area. We have a proud nation of Yorta Yorta clans that have existed here for thousands and thousands of years. We can depict such diversity in our museums or on flagpoles, as been suggested, or such as like the Sandridge Bridge that's over the Yarra, where I think there's about 128 glass panels that are there. They've got information on not only Indigenous people, but the countries of immigrants that have arrived here. I think they're in alphabetical order from Afghanistan to Zimbabwe, so, and the journey that they've taken here. So we do need to recognise visually. I'd certainly take Councillor Abdullah's point that it's got to be deeper than that, but we do need to recognise visually what makes us special here in Greater Shepparton. This was one proposal, but as been alluded to by other councillors as well, I'm sure that with more vision on what can be achieved, there can be still more to come.
Good. Thank you, Councillor Brophy. Are there any other councillors that would like to speak to the motion? I'll just add a few comments to it. Look, in principle, I support the motion for what is in front of us, acknowledging that we're not going to go ahead with an avenue of flags, but I think the intent around what Councillor Dobson was wanting to achieve has merit, and I think that needs to be progressed in another form. And we know there's some individuals within our community are keen to highlight the impact that multicultural communities have had on our more broader Greater Shepparton community over, as Councillor Brophy suggested, over 100 years of strong migration and the impact that they have had on helping build the community for what it is today, and how is that recognised, and where is the most appropriate place for that to be recognised. So the avenue of flags was an idea. I mean, I don't think anyone would have been disappointed to see that progress. Reasons in the report it's not going to, but I think the conversation needs to continue about whether there's a moment there at the Sam Museum or the Heritage Centre. We just unveiled the Sports Hall of Fame there, and is there an addition that could be added there to showcase the impact the multicultural community have had on our broader region. So I commend Councillor Dobson in obviously putting this and tabling and really starting that open conversation about what do things look like next. So Councillor Summer, did you have any closing comments?
I do, thank you. I really appreciate all the comments that have come back on this, and not to detract from any of the comments of what was said, because I completely agree, but we do need to respect community consultation. The only thing I'd probably take issue with is that we don't celebrate multiculturalism enough. The report does highlight that we've got 14 festival and events. I won't read them all out, but things like St George's Road Food Festival, the Vesak Festival, Pacifica Festival, we do that. We have a reconciliation action plan for First Nations. We acknowledge culturally significant days. We have art murals across the municipality. We do a lot in that space, which is something that we should be quite proud of. So the intent of this has a lot of merit, and potentially, though, I'd like to revisit something that won't have a price tag of $650,000, and some of the options that came forward through community consultation was a lot less than that, and they also had merit. So we have to acknowledge that this particular project of an avenue of flags was not particularly well received, unfortunately, but we could do something, and it does sound like we all want to do something quite visual, possibly, like I said before, in times of plenty.
Very good. Thank you, councillor Summer. Councillors, we will now go to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Motion carried. Councillors, we go to page 26 of the agenda, item 10.1, contracts awarded under delegation for June 2024. There is a recommendation. Can I have a councillor put that forward as a motion? Councillor Latson.
Thank you, Ms Alley. I'd like to move the recommendation on page 26 that the council, 1, note the contracts awarded under delegation pursuant to a formal procurement process for the reporting period, and 2, note the request for tender advertised but not yet awarded.
Councillor Latson. Can I have a councillor please second that motion? Councillor Latson, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Sally. Just the usual tenders that we see come across the desk. I'll read some of them out. There's the installation of culvert guard rail, Shepparton, Violet Town Road, Kyla East. Provision of asphalt surfacing and associated works, panel of suppliers. Drummond Road drainage construction, Shepparton. Margaret Street stormwater pump station and electrical upgrade, Tatura. Construction of Orvale Road and Poplar Avenue roundabout, Orvale. That's been quite a significant intersection that's good to see getting addressed. Provision of cleaning services for the council buildings, Shepparton BMX Club, multi-use events pavilion, minor civil works, panel of suppliers. Thank you, Mayor Sally.
Thank you, councillor Latson. Councillor Summer, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thank you. Council laws don't vote on these things. They come to us as part of delegation to council staff. So it's always appreciated that they're listed in the agenda. We're across what's going on at the lower level, and completely agree with all of these. It's mostly just housekeeping, but I'm very excited about that roundabout in Orvale. And other than that, it's just a tick and flick, so happy.
Councillor Summer, are there any councillors that would like to speak against the motion? Any councillors that would like to speak for the motion? Any closing comments, councillor Latson?
No, thank you, Mayor Sally.
Councillors, we will now go to the vote. All those in favour? Motion carried on opposed. Councillors, over to page 29, item 10.2, governance rules and election period policy. I'll now hand over to CEO Fiona Legasic to just explain a few changes.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I just want to bring to everyone's attention to please note that the attachment to the governance rules report that was initially provided to councillors and also made available on our website contained some broken links inside that particular attachment. Please note that that's now been rectified. Councillors have been provided with a copy of the report that now where the links work via Docs on Tap, and our website has also been updated with the attachment with the links that actually now work.
Right, thank you, Fiona. Councillors, there is a recommendation. Can I have a councillor put that forward as a motion? Councillor Dobson.
Thank you, Mayor Sally. I move that the council, 1, having noted that no submissions were received during the community engagement process for its draft governance rules and election period policy, A, adopt the governance rules as attached, and B, adopt the election period policy and guidelines for the placement of signs, electoral as attached, and 2, note that the governance rules and election period policy will commence operation upon the signing of the documents by the Chief Executive Officer.
Thank you, councillor Dobson. Can I have a councillor second that motion? Councillor Brophy.
Second that motion, Ms Sally.
Councillor Dobson, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yeah, this is purely a governance motion, Mayor Sally, and it's to ensure that we all know what the rules, or not when I say we, not particularly myself, but others who are standing, will understand what can and cannot be done during the next I suppose, a few weeks until the 27th of October, when it's D-Day for all those who will be standing for council. The election period policy, and I think we've got to be very careful, and certainly I would ask that everybody fully understand that these rules are in place so that no unfair advantage be given or taken. So purely a governance recommendation, Mayor Saley.
Very good, thank you, councillor Dobson. Councillor Brophy, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Mayor Saleh. Just briefly, the governance rules are super important. They are a template, well, actually no, they're probably more of a framework of how we function and operate within this chamber today. And the changes that have been made have been presented by the governance team, the councillors to consider, feedback, suggestions being represented. I certainly endorse the changes to the governance rules. The election period policy I see as a normal cyclic, quadrennial enacted policy that meets legislative and community expectations.
Thank you, councillor Brophy. Any councillors like to speak against the motion? Councillor Summer.
Thank you. You'll probably know by now that I'm mildly obsessed with governance rules, so I do tend to trawl over them quite closely. I've spent heaps of time this term trying to model these rules to suit council laws vendors rather than the organisation, and I've put forward a large list of amendments over the years, some successful, some not, and the biggest regret in that regard is not succeeding in expanding on the definition of amendments. It's just so annoying. The current definition does not allow councillors to change the intent of a motion, and I keep arguing that makes that action basically defunct, but that's a battle I'm yet to win. If I do have one clear message today, and this is for potential candidates that might be listening as well, it's that councillors must understand how important these rules are, as stated already. Despite public perception, the only power that councillors have is during these meetings. One councillor alone cannot dictate any outcome. Everything depends on the majority vote during these meetings. These rules are the Bible we live by, and I don't believe we've taken enough ownership of that. The rules can potentially be used to stifle debate, silence opinions, and deny the public benefit of open debate, and I'm not satisfied that these rules in front of us safeguard against that interference. In fact, one additional clause may further prevent democratic deliberations, and that clause is the requirement for the councillors' notice of motions to pass a safety test, and this will be done by so-called subject matter experts. I find that is far too subjective to be actioned with any real logic. The outcome will be determined by public opinion of the day, and I don't believe that that's good governance. So I'm probably not going to vote for this motion based on that. We already know that the role of councillor carries some degree of risk. We know that pockets of the community may feel stronger about some issues than others, but it shouldn't stop us debating and voting on what's in front of us. So perhaps I'm coming from a place of distrust, but I do believe that it detracts from the power of councillors rather than enhance them. I believe the next council should be tasked with the responsibility of setting out meeting procedures, not this group. We're at the tail end. If we pass this today, the next review won't be for years, likely years, which will not be in the best interests of the next group and probably not in the best interests of democracy. So please, any candidates, read the rules, see what you think, because that is where our true power lies.
Thank you, councillor Summer. Any councillors like to speak for the motion? Councillor Adam.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Saleh. I just want to highlight one paragraph in the executive summary. In accordance with the Local Government Act 2020, the Act, Council is required to maintain the governance rules and election period policy to ensure it meets the required legislative provisions and is updated to reflect current practices and terminology. So these are obligations that we have to fulfil. Within those obligations, there is room for movement, which obviously there is because we've made some minor changes. I'd like to just draw attention to one of those, which I think was important, improved clarity regarding councillor attendance at virtual/hybrid meetings. Over the years, that's been a potential high-risk area because we were having meetings during the COVID pandemic where councillors were in their own individual environment. Who was sitting beside or behind or off screen, nobody really knows. So I think there is some tidying around that, which I think is really important. Because as we know, a council meeting is a controlled environment. It should be as such. So there's a few other changes there, but generally I approve it, so I support the motion.
Thank you, councillor Adam. Any other councillors that would like to speak to the motion?
The rules.
Would know that.
Thank you.
Yeah, very good. Any other councillors like to speak to the motion? No? I agree. I just want to pick up some points that you do have the ability to amend or change any policies throughout your council term. The reality is that there's a standard process that we follow to make sure that when we do endorse them, that they come back at a routine stage to update if required. But this is a pure example of that it can be done at different times throughout your council term. I want to commend Beck, obviously head of governance there, about the work that you've done, in particular the election work, and to provide that clarity to existing councillors and potential new candidates as well. So well done to you and your team in helping bring this together with all the other work that you've got going on as well. So I think all in all, this is a positive step in evolving, which is where the governance rules evolve, being that the Act effectively is our overarching principle that we have to follow, and then what we choose to do with the governance rules are important. And I think we've operated quite effectively over the last 4 years. Anything, Councillor Summer?
Absolutely, Mayor Sally.
Very good. Any closing comments, Councillor Dobson?
Yeah, if you look at this council as a corporation, it has an annual budget of well in excess of $100 million and assets in the billions of dollars. Of course, you've got to have a clear and concise group of rules surrounding the operation of the council as a corporation in whatever form or whatever direction we take. But we are governed by state government rules and regulations. We're allowed to fiddle around at the edges a little bit, but we must have a clear and concise set of rules with which to operate, and I believe this document provides that.
We'll now go to vote. All those in favour? Against?
I'll vote for it, it's fine.
Do it again. All those in favour? Motion carried unopposed. Councillors, we go to page 33 of the agenda, item 10.3, Councillor Resources and Facilities Policy. There is a recommendation. Can I have a councillor put that forward as a motion, please? Councillor Summer.
I will move that the council adopts the Council of Resources and Facilities Policy as attached with another dot point. The councillors reserve the right to purchase devices provided by council at the end of their council term for a peppercorn rate.
I'd like to foreshadow a motion.
Yeah, so it needs to be second first before you can foreshadow. Would a councillor like to second that motion, please?
Which motion?
The one that Councillor Summer just put forward?
Noting that I can't foreshadow it yet, I'll second that motion.
Yep, that's fine. Councillor Spinks. Councillor Summer, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thank you. These are rules by which we are given resources and facilities to help support us in our role. I remember that last term, former Councillor Giovanetti changed the policy, and that included the provision of laptops. And these have been useful and very highly utilised during this term. So I'd like to personally thank former Councillor Giovanetti for that addition. In terms of the dot point that is an extra dot point that is not in the recommendation in the agenda, it's just in regards to having been afforded the opportunity to purchase devices in the past. So after 4 years, our devices are generally very outdated and of very little use to council. And I do understand they're all council owned, but just as an example, for someone who's had the same phone number for 12 years, the inconvenience of changing that number could outweigh the financial value of returning a very old device back to council. Small thing, but certainly worth considering for us as well as for future councillors.
Thank you, Councillor Summer. Councillor Spinks, would you like to speak to the motion?
Sure, just briefly. I am comfortable with the Council of Resources and Facilities Policy as it has been presented to us, and don't necessarily support the addition, but as I have heard said, for the purpose of debate, happy to second and leave it to the councillor group as a whole to decide whether this moves forward with the additional point or is lost. But as it stands for the Council of Resources and Facilities, it is a good document.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Spinks. Are there any councillors that would like to speak against the motion that's proposed? Are there any councillors that would like to speak for the motion?
Yes, it's an interesting one, and I thank you for putting it up, because there are pros and cons on both sides. I can see at where the council management are at the end of the term, the 4-year term. There is documentation and information on council phone and computers and goodness knows what. That is, in effect, the property of the council, even though you've been, using it, it is still the property of the council. And so I think, I understand where you are and I probably agree with it, but I think it probably needs a bit more fleshing out, because there should be, in my view, a few more details around it at the end of the day. The process, for example, that it goes through, because I know on my own stuff here that I've got some personal emails and information, and I've got some stuff that's to do with water industry, for example, that may or may not always be associated with the council. So, we've got to make a determination about that. It's a tricky one. I agree that it would be ideal if the council could say, okay, well, we'll delete all the council stuff that's on your implements, and you take it and you're going to pay whatever the peppercorn amount may well be. I think the alternative is that the council take it and they wipe everything and then give it to or sell it to charity. Is that, as I understand, is that the process?
Can I seek some clarification? Yes, that is the process.
So they would go to some sort of charity for use by the public, free of all the council information. So it's an interesting one. I'll be interested to hear what other councillors got to say.
Sally, I'd like to foreshadow a motion.
Thank you, councillor Brophy. I'll get to that in a minute. Okay, are there any other councillors that would like to speak to the motion? I'll just add some comments around councillor Summer.
Sorry, did you say two? I was waiting to
Two.
say against.
Yeah, do you want to speak against the motion? Yeah.
In two, because still it's a last minute sort of change that you have added an additional bullet point. From the briefings and all the other information that was presented to us, my understanding was that it is more in terms of resources that are used to sort of manage the process of buyback and all of those. That is more expensive, and it's more straightforward for council to just take it back and then give it away to charity or whatnot. And even though personally, I would have liked to have my laptop back and to have the opportunity to buy it back, I understood that in terms of processes, in terms of council resources that are going to be involved, perhaps it's more straightforward to just give it back and not have the buyback option. So on the basis of that understanding, if now the motion that is presented before us includes that point of introducing the option of buyback, I would be reluctant to support that motion, because I would want to know more details or have more information about, the costs that are involved. What, in terms of financial costs, in terms of resources, what is more straightforward? I do not have that information at the moment, which gives me the confidence that, yes, I can support this additional point that Councillor Summer has included. So on the basis of that, I will not support this motion, but my personal preference would always be to have the option of buyback, because it's sort of, it makes sense. But again, it's when we make these decisions, it's not about our individual likes and wants and desires. It's also about, as an organization, what's the best thing to do. So I would not support this motion on this occasion. And if there are any foreshadowed motions, basically I would want to have that information coming back from the officers about putting that point in. Yeah. Hope I've explained myself well, but that's where I am. Thank you.
Are there any other councillors that would like to speak to the motion? Councillor Adam?
In fact, Mayor, so I'd like to also foreshadow a motion.
Righto.
Have to tell us what it is.
Is this on the basis?
Don't have to.
Point of clarification, Mayor, so is this on the basis that the motion is lost, that there'll be foreshadowing?
Yeah, so we'll deal with what's in front of us now, then I'll go to councillor Brophy. We'll deal with his motion, then if that's unsuccessful, we'll go to councillor Adam. Okay, that was all you wanted to say? Yeah, any other councillors like to speak to the motion? Councillor Latson?
That's like a point of clarification around the devices and their end of use. Is it at the end of use of a councillor term or end of life?
The governance rules that we just endorsed clearly state what we can and can't use council material for. So effectively from the 17th of September, or that period of time that you cannot use your council device to conduct council campaigning or any of that type of material. So post that is effectively what Councillor Summer is talking about. But as of that period of time, you can't use your council phone or laptop or iPad to conduct a campaign or.
Yeah, I'll have to rephrase the question. I think when the next incoming councillors coming into council, will any of these devices still be used, or are they all new? It's all brand new. Yeah, I wasn't aware.
Yeah, what do you
Yes,
want?
new purchases are undertaken for council.
I want to know. Thank you.
Okay, I can understand what Councillor Summers asking for. I get it, but the reality is the actual hardware technically isn't able to be used without the relevant SIM card that you're referring to, which is your number. But as of the 17th of September, technically speaking, if that's the only device you have, you probably need to try and find another phone number to be able to conduct a council campaign if that's what you're going to choose to do at that period of time.
Oh, totally, yeah.
So it's beyond that point. I probably wouldn't be interested in wanting to buy a 4-year-old old Apple iPhone. They might build a house with things that have modernised a little bit from there. So look, I in principle understand, and I agree with what's been said, that it would be so much easier for us to get a hold of our devices and purchase them and keep things going. But there has to be a clear separation between our role as a councillor and a general community member, and not being able to take that equipment on with us beyond our period of time here, whatever that might look like. So if you're running for council and you're re-elected, you would retain that number and obviously get a new phone. If you're not, well, you hand it in like everyone else would be at that particular time. So any closing comments?
Yes, thank you. Obviously technology is not my forte, so I'm probably just scared of trying to buy my phone. But, it wasn't exactly last minute because we have spoken about it at briefings, and I was not aware that they were given to charity. That is new information to me that changes my position on this. I think perhaps we're really overthinking it because it has been done in the past, but if it goes to charity, that's for a good cause, so what can I say?
Very good. Okay, councillors, we'll now go to vote. All those in favour? Against? Motion lost. So we will now come to the foreshadowed motion from Councillor Brophy.
Thank you, Mayor Saley. I'd like to foreshadow the motion as per on page 33 of the agenda, that the recommendation that the council adopt the council resources and facilities policy as attached.
Thank you.
Move.
Move. Do you want to just read it?
This is the foreshadowed motion we're moving.
Yeah.
Just has to do the.
Do you want to just move?
I'll move the recommendation that the council adopt the council resources and facilities policy as attached.
Thank you, Councillor Brophy. Can I have a councillor second that motion, please? Councillor Dobson. Councillor Brophy, would you like to speak to the motion?
No, I think it all.
Councillor Dobson, would you like to speak to the motion?
No, thank you, Mayor Saley.
Are there any councillors that would like to speak against the motion? Any councillors like to speak for the motion?
I just want to say, I know we just had that discussion around the councillors being able to flex their governance rules around, but I think that's exactly what we're doing right now. So this is
Right.
yeah, this is an interesting experiment. No, very happy to support this particular motion.
Very good. Any other councillors like to speak to the motion?
Yeah, just for transparency, thank you, Mr Mayor. My foreshadowed motion was that motion as well. Clear on that.
The easiest ones are always the most complicated agenda items. Any closing comments, Councillor Brophy?
I didn't have opening comments. So closing.
Very good. Councillors, we will now go to the vote. All those in favour? Motion carried unopposed. Councillors, over the page through page 35 of the agenda item 10.4, councillor expenses policy. There is a recommendation. Can I have a councillor put that forward as a motion, please? Councillor Brophy.
Thank you, Mayor Saley. I put forward the recommendation that council adopt the councillor expenses policy as attached.
Thank you, Councillor Brophy. Any councillors like to second that motion? Councillor Dobson. Councillor Brophy, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Mayor Saley. A lot of the details already in the report detailed in the agenda. I'd like to say that councillors are probably some of the most scrutinised public representatives in the community, and rightly so. I mean, the community demand that those representing them are honest, have the community interests foremost, and not themselves, and that they also are adequately compensated for any out-of-pocket expenses that have been approved. Fair and just is what a councillor expenses policy should be, and I believe that this particular policy is. The public needs the trust, and this actually provides the surety in regards to that.
Great, thank you, councillor. Councillor Dobson, would you like to speak to the motion?
The 2 points, thank you, Mayor Sally. The 2 points that I looked at was the reimbursement of childcare costs and reimbursement for carers within the meaning of section 4 of the Carers Recognition Act. What we're doing here is we're getting up with the times, and I think it's only right and reasonable that councillors who have these costs from time to time be reimbursed, considering that they're giving away their own personal time or their own business or employment time to be on the council. So it's terrific that the council is really up to date with these modern provisions.
Thank you, councillor Dobson. Are there any councillors that would like to speak against the motion? Any councillors like to speak for the motion? Councillor Abdullah.
Thank you. I just, following Councillor Dobson's comment about childcare expenses and all, I mean, I fully support this policy. I believe that the policy, the councillors' expenses policy, it helps organisation to manage its finances more effectively. It brings, it's essential basically for financial controls, fairness, compliance, transparency, as Councillor Brophy has also noted. The expense policy brings transparency to ratepayers about and to show them how their rates are being used by the elected representatives. But on the point that Councillor Dobson had raised about childcare policy, I also childcare expenses. I'm very pleased to see that different expenses that are outlined in the policy and the arrangements for those expenses, such as travel expenses, professional development expenses, or childcare expenses. And I know that there are certain councils, and thankfully not in our community and not in our council, but in many other LGAs, community councillors have received a lot of backlash about, especially women councillors, about using their childcare expenses. So on that note, I just want to say that expenses like professional development expenses or childcare expenses, they are so important, but because these expenses are required to assist councillors in performing their roles effectively. So how can we expect a councillor not to have any professional development opportunity or not to do their job properly just because they have childcare responsibilities at home? So I just hope and I believe that our community is very understanding and they would understand that these expenses are necessary and they only help councillors to perform their roles more effectively. So I'm wholeheartedly supporting this policy. Thank you.
Right, thank you, Councillor Abdullah. Are there any other councillors that would like to speak to the motion? Councillor Summer.
Just on that childcare expense, that actually removes a very large barrier for young parents to run for council. If we want a fair and diverse group around the table, that has to include parents of young families, because that makes up a huge chunk of our demographic. So I applaud that part. I'm also pleased that there's clearer guidelines for requesting legal advice in terms of the indemnity that we're rightfully allowed under the Act, because that's not always forthcoming. And also that professional development fund is quite a hefty fund and it's rarely touched. So I just want potential candidates to know you might not feel across everything at the beginning, but these are options to you so you can continue your education. And this can be even in the form of a company director's course, which is very, very challenging, but it's thousands of dollars that can come out of this fund that is rarely used. So there's options. We're well supported in that regard.
Very good. Thank you, Councillor Summer. Are there any other councillors that would like to speak to the motion? Councillor Adam.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Sally. I just want to add to the comments from Councillor Summer that she's correct. It's very important, especially the childcare component of our expense policy, but also to the rest of the community. Anecdotally, I've been for nearly 3 terms here, and I can assure you that this council is very frugal in its expenditure when it comes to councillors' expenses. That might be a reflection on our councillors more than the organisation, but knowing what I know about other councils and some of the expenses that are incurred, quite mind-boggling actually. This council is very, very frugal, as I said, very responsible, and we work well within those guidelines, and so I fully support this. this is the guidelines that's kept this council on the straight and narrow, so to speak, so fully supported.
Very good, thank you, councillor Adams. Are there any other councillors that would like to speak to the motion? No? Any closing comments, councillor Brophy?
No, thank you.
Great, we'll now go to the vote. All those in favour? Motion carried and opposed. Councillors, we go to page 38 of the agenda, item 11.1, Tally Group of Flood Scoping Study. There is a recommendation. Can I have a councillor put that forward as a motion? Councillor Adams.
Mayor Sally, I'll move the motion. It's on page 38. I think I'll read it, it's not that long. Council, 1, note the conclusion of the community engagement process for the Tally Group of Flood Scoping Study. Final report, February 2024. Point 2, adopt the Tally Group of Flood Scoping Study. Final report, February 2024. Point 3, begin the preparation of a planning scheme amendment to implement the findings of the report by including a land subject to inundation overlay, LSIO, in the Greater Shepparton planning scheme. 4, update the Greater Shepparton City Council Municipal Flood Management Plan to reflect the findings of this study. Point 5, update the Greater Shepparton City Council Emergency Plan to reflect the findings of the study. And in conclusion, point 6, include in future budgets the installation and upgrading of drainage infrastructure as set out in the actions of the study.
Great, thank you, councillor Adams. Can I have a councillor second that motion, please? Councillor Summer. Councillor Adams, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Sally. This was brought to us quite a few months ago now. I think the funding came from well, we didn't pay for this, it came from another source, from the state government, which is good. I'm glad it did come through, because without that funding, this wouldn't have been actually achieved. There is higher levels of studies when it comes to flood studies, but this bit of work really assisted in getting a better lay of the land, pardon the pun, in respect to flooding. Yeah, I didn't intend that. But it's given us invaluable information for future works in respect to future flood studies. But it's really giving us a great understanding of what the risks are out, especially in Tullygroupner, obviously, and we're hoping to do this for some other communities as well. The first one, I think it's a great study. It can only help. It didn't cost us anything, but it's invaluable. Thank you.
Councillor Summer, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yes, thank you. Tally managed to avoid flood damage during the last major flood, but they have been flooded on multiple other occasions dating back to 1919, then 1939, then 1956, then 1974, 1993 and 2012. Yet to date, there's been no flood overlay applied in Tullygroupner, so this will be a new change for the town. And even so, we didn't get much feedback. There was about 20 responses to our survey and no formal submission, which I guess means that they were all very satisfied with our work. Just want to thank the Emergency Management Victoria for their financial contribution of $50,000 and GBMA for their contribution of $7,500 that made this flood scoping work possible. And note that the excess funds have been returned to those organisations. And yeah, I support it.
Great, thank you, councillor Summer. Are there any councillors that would like to speak against the motion? Any councillors like to speak for the motion? Councillor Brophy.
Thank you, Mayor Sally. Look, there's an awful lot in this of detail in these studies, and I think I won't go through the specifics of it because we have been talking about it for the last few months. The scoping study is really important, and I take it that not only this one for the Tullygroupner one, but the other one that's coming up as well, the Katandra West one, the flooding scoping there, that's been done, that study. There were no responses received in regards to the response to the final report, and as Councillor Summers said, you know, I conclude from that the actual study itself has been very effective in communicating out to people. Measures will now be undertaken in regards to that. Planning scheme amendments put in place, updates emergency plan, it's all been mentioned there. It isn't foolproof though, and that's been mentioned, there's been floods, and I think part of that is because every flood is different. Every flood that comes through is different in regards to property and levels, etc. But the more information we've got, the better technologies we've got, the closer we are to actually eliminating as much of the flooding damage as we can possibly do. So this is fantastic in regards to that. And, you know, it was really very good to see pinpointed each particular property where the flood levels lie on everyone. So that, I think, provides, under this particular study, some surety for those properties, people who have already got properties there or people that are going to build in the future.
Great. Thank you, councillor Brophy. Are there any other councillors that would like to speak to the motion? Councillor Ladson.
Thank you, Ms Sally. I'll echo Councillor Brophy's points just around. I want to thank the people at Tully Garupna who, during difficult times, have marked the water level and recorded it, which is being used for this scoping study, and it indicates for future, building up resilience for townships. And yeah, it's just invaluable to have that, over decades of, weather events of this nature. And as we go on, it's not uncommon to have storm events and weather events that, are putting people's homes and livelihoods at risk. So having that, taking a photo of where the water come up to, or just making a permanent mark on, whether it's a tree or one of them was on the garden, on the shed door. And when the shed door opened, it was like you could still see where the watermark was. So yeah, it's just invaluable information. So thanks for those residents that took that during the difficult time. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ladson. Are there any other councillors that would like to speak to the motion? Closing comments, Councillor Adam?
Yes, thank you, Sally. I have just, in addition to what I said earlier on, just want to make note of the long-term plan now. Study recommends a flood study followed by a floodplain risk management study utilising hydraulic modelling be undertaken in the longer term. These will be undertaken as funding becomes available. As I said, this is a preliminary entry-level study, but without doing this, we really can't get onto the next steps. And now that this is done, it really assists us in gaining funding for the next step. But in the short term, just from this particular study, we will improve. There's going to be improvements of the south side bypass drain, allowance for additional rural runoff from south of Victoria Road to discharge into the Slaughterhouse Road diversion drain, and upgrades to the existing railway and highway crossing drainage structures. So there is some immediate actions being taken from this plan, which is great. But as we do a more in-depth plan moving forward, there'll be no more. There'll be other recommendations for longer-term activities out there.
Very good. Thank you, Councillor Adam. Councillor, now go to the vote. All those in favour? Motion carried, unopposed. Councillors, we go to page 45 of the agenda, item 11.2, Katandra West Flood Scoping Study. There is a recommendation. Can I have a councillor put that forward as a motion? Councillor Ladson.
Thank you, Mayor Sally. I'll like to move the recommendation on page 45.
Second the motion. Thank you, Mayor Sally.
Thank you, Councillor Adam. Councillor Ladson, would you like to speak to the motion?
Just similar to the Tally flood scoping study, that the people that Katandra West hasn't faced floods that Tully Garupna and other towns and cities have faced over the years, but in times of difficult times of flooding and storms, that documenting the evidence is vital for scoping studies like this.
Great, thank you, Councillor Ladson. Councillor Adam.
Yeah, pretty much a carbon copy of what I said earlier on in regard to Tully Garupna's. The flooding events over the years have been virtually the same. They're reasonably close to each other geographically, but the work there is just as important as it is for Tully Garupna. It's the first step, and hopefully into the future will become more long-term studies that will be a lot more higher level. As I said, we need to really understand that a complete flood study is a major undertaking, and we don't have the funding for that now, but I'm pretty sure that this will help instigate that sort of funding into the future, and we'll wait upon that, and when it happens, we'll grab it and we'll do those studies to make it more secure and more safe for the residents in these communities.
Great, thank you, Councillor Adam. Any councillors like to speak against the motion? Any councillors like to speak for the motion? Councillor Summer.
Just that Katandra West is also impacted by, as stated, very similar to Tully Garupna, flooding in 20-year cycles, but they were spared during the last flood. But because no houses were inundated, the risk is considered to be very low. And again, no formal submissions, so we have to assume all is good in calm water. And just to reiterate Councillor Ladson's comment on local knowledge, I believe there were quite a few residents out Katandra West who gave council a helping hand on that as well.
Very good, thank you. Any other councillors like to speak to the motion? Any closing comments, Councillor Ladson?
Thank you, Mayor Sally. I'd just like to thank the community reference group that have met on 2 occasions in Katandra West with the following membership. So Greater Shepparton City Council had 2 members, Goulburn Broken Catchment Management Authority 2 members, Vic SES 1 member, Goulburn Murray Water 2 members, Regional Transport 1 member, and community residents had 7 members. So thank you for those that took the time to contribute to the scoping study.
Very good. Thank you, councillor Latson. We will now go to the vote. All those in favour? Motion carried, none opposed. Councillors, we go to page 50 of the agenda, item 12, confidential reports. There's one there at 12.1, which is designation of confidentiality of information reports. The following report and associated attachments have been designated confidential by the Chief Executive Officer under Governance Rule 107 and in accordance with the definition of confidential information in the Local Government Act 2020 in brackets the Act. Item 12.4, Shepparton Regional Sale Yards Commercial Lease. This document contains information which is consistent with the definition of private commercial information, being information provided by a business, commercial or financial undertaking that, if released, would unreasonably expose the business, commercial or financial undertaking disadvantage. Item 12.2, which is closed meeting to members of the public. Councillors, there is a recommendation. Can I have someone put that forward as a motion? Councillor Adam.
Thank you, Mayor Sally. I move that pursuant to section 66(1) of the Local Government Act 2020 resolve that the council meeting be closed to members of the public for consideration of the following confidential item: Shepparton Regional Sale Yards Commercial Lease.
Councillor Adam, can I have a councillor second that motion, please?
I'll second that motion.
Councillor Latson, thank you. Councillors, all in favour? Motion carried. So we will now close the meeting to the public. Sorry, guys. More than welcome to wait out there for when we reopen it, if you like.
Then come back in.
Plenty of water, councillor.
Fine.
Welcome back. Item 13, documents for signing and sealing. Nil received. Councillors, we go over to page 51. Item 14.1.1, councillor activities for June 2024. There is a recommendation. Can I have a councillor put that forward as motion? Councillor Dobson.
I move that the council receive and note the summary of the council's community interactions and informal meetings of councillors.
Thank you, councillor Dobson. Can I have a councillor second that motion? Councillor Brophy.
I second that motion.
Thank you. Councillor Dobson, would you like to speak to the motion?
Just briefly, what this summary is saying to the public, that the councillors are out and about on a variety of areas, which we don't need to go into at the moment because those who have been out and about will know. And I commend Mayor Sarley on the amount of work that he does representing the community, not only for the council but also regional cities Victoria.
Thank you, councillor Dobson. Councillor Brophy, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Mayor Sarley. Yes, I see the June particular activities as being the month of giving, and I make mention of a couple of the ones that took place. And giving in the sense of former Mayor, the City of Shepparton, Murray Sleep, who gave his blazer, which is out in the foyer there, in a nice case there as well, that he gave that at an age of 101. That was a unanimous gesture to the council. About giving as well, the food share and make a meal that particular evening as well. Wonderful evening, a lot of money was raised for a very worthy cause, which was food share itself. So many participants, and I think the one that ended up giving most was Everyday Supplies, a local business supporting local people. I think that was really good. So the Lions charity run that came through town, nearly 1,000 kilometre run that they were doing, and there were people from not only Australia but from Germany, Canada, Poland and the Ukraine, all with a message of hope. I thought that was wonderful. And you talk about giving, and there was a young man by the name of Miller Carter who received the Queen's Scout Award in that particular month. It's a huge achievement to be able to get that particular honour, and doing it through COVID, it's very selfless to be able to do that. So much so that on one of the things that he had to tick off, which was a major hike, very taxing on himself and his co-hiker. They came across some people who were injured and carried them back to camp, forgetting their own particular journey that they had to complete, taking them back to camp and looking after them in the medical set. Now that's giving, and our community looking through that, it's a very giving community.
Very good. Are there any councillors that would like to speak against the motion? Any councillors that would like to speak for the motion? Councillor Ladson.
Thank you, Mayor Sarley. I just want to point out the Historical Society of Mooroopna received a significant donation from the Peter and Maria Coppolas Foundation. And there was a morning tea that was well attended. I just want to point out that a lot of people don't know about the Mooroopna Museum, and it's at 30 Park Street, Mooroopna, and it's a wealth of history and former items from the museum and at the Mooroopna Hospital, and it's well worth going down there to 30 Park Street, Mooroopna, and having a look for yourself.
Very good, councillor Ladson. Any other councillors like to speak to the motion? Closing comments, councillor Dobson.
No, thank you.
Councillors, we will now go to the vote. All those in favour? Motion carried or opposed. Councillors, we go to page 55 of the agenda, item 15, notice of motion amendment or rescission or received. Item 16, urgent business not included on the agenda. Councillors, I do understand there is some urgent business that has arisen since the finalisation of the agenda. Do I have a councillor with any urgent business?
Thank you, Mayor Sarley. There is indeed. I would like to table the report and attachments titled Shepparton North Activity Centre Structure Plan as an item of urgent business.
Thank you, councillor Adam. Because that has arisen since the finalisation of the agenda and it does meet urgent business governance rules, I'm happy to allow you to
Like me to explain why I...
that. I will need someone to second that, if that is possible, before we do that.
I'll second that.
Thank you, councillor Dobson. Councillors, I'll ask you to vote in favour of that. Those that are in favour of having councillor Adam table this, all in favour? Against? What are you doing, councillor Summer?
Thinking it.
Okay, councillors, in favour? Against? Motion carried. Councillor Adam, what would you like to table for urgent business?
Yes, I'll explain why we should table that Shepparton North Activity Centre Structure Plan. Councillors were informed of a VCAT application after close of business on Friday, 19th of July 2024, which concerns the validity of Council's 23rd April 2024 resolution on the Shepparton North Activity Centre Structure Plan and Amendment C24-5G SHE. This is a separate VCAT proceeding. There is a separate VCAT proceeding underway in relation to an extension of the time application in which the status of the structure plan and amendment C24-5G SHE are considerations. The hearing for this matter is currently in progress. In addition to that, Mayor Sali, councillors note that at 2:40 PM today, councillors and CEO received an email from Mr Chris Burke at Metcash putting council on notice that it would be unlawful to consider the report and make resolutions at the OCM in relation to that report. Councillors have carefully considered this email, and as such, however, based on verbal legal advice, the case relied upon by Mr Burke, in Mr Burke's email is distinguishable from the current circumstances, as the council is not seeking to rescind a previous council resolution, but rather council can proceed on the basis that the April resolution is invalid. Instead, the council relies upon the appropriate High Court authority which supports the consideration of the matter below us. And the motion that I wish to put forward, the urgent motion, Mayor Sali, is as follows. That the council notes that the amendments 24-5G SHE to the Greater Shepparton Planning Scheme received 17 submissions, that these submissions and amendment C24-5G SHE were referred to an independent planning panel, and that independent planning panel has now prepared a panel report, bit of a tongue twister, which is dated 22nd of March 2024 as attached. Note that because the resolution of 23rd of April 2024 was invalid and was of no force and effect, council is able to exercise the power to adopt amendment C245G SHE now. Point 3, that the council adopts the planning panel's recommendations as outlined in the panel report. Point 4, adopts in accordance with section 29 of the Planning and Environment Act 1987, amendment C245G SHE with changes as attached. And point 5, submits to the Minister for Planning in accordance with section 31 of the Planning and Environment Act 1987, the adopted amendment for approval.
Councillor Adam, can I have a councillor second that motion, please?
I'll second that motion, Mayor Sali.
Adam, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Sali. This North Activity Centre Structure Plan is something the council has been waiting for a long time to activate. It's seen as a real positive development, especially for north of Shepparton. There's quite a lot of points that we could highlight. I'll just highlight a couple of things that I think are important. This will also direct commercial development to provide a compact and vibrant activity centre, which will service residents in the northern part of Shepparton. The amendment provides clear direction for the development in the north of Shepparton and certainly the landowners and developers regarding areas suitable for development. So it's a positive step in the growth of Greater Shepparton. Long time in coming. Let's hope we can get some great results from this.
Very good, thank you, councillor Adam. Councillor Dobson, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yes, I'd like to see this move forward, Councillor Mayor Sali. It's a great opportunity to move this precinct forward to contribute to the sorely needed development in the north that's been hanging around for quite some time. There is unprecedented residential development close by the subject land, and that is crying out for development of more commercial land within the precinct. There are 3 schools, and there are sporting precincts, and there is also public hospitals, etc. And it's time that we move forward. A commercial development in this area will certainly be developed, and I look forward to a positive result.
Councillor Dobson, are there any councillors that would like to speak against the motion? Are there any councillors that would like to speak for the motion? Councillor Summer.
Thank you. The matter came back to us due to a legal challenge. Rather than clog up the courts, we're attempting to correct an alleged mistake. I consider that this is likely the path of least resistance. Hopefully, supporting this motion ensures we can continue unlocking investment opportunities for the good people of North Shepparton. Overall, planning panel found that the structure plan is bold and visionary in guiding the development and redevelopment of this important Shepparton North area for the next 20 to 30 years. So hopefully we can get on with that very soon.
Very good, thank you. Are there any other councillors that would like to speak to the motion? No, any closing comments, councillor Adam?
Just to once again reiterate the importance of this. Greater Shepparton is actually growing fantastically at the moment, North Shepparton especially, and we'd like to see some great developments moving forward out there. It allows them to happen.
Thank you, councillors. We'll now go to the vote. All those in favour? Motion carried, unopposed. Councillors, we go to item 17 of the agenda, which is closed meeting. We'll do that now at 4:22 PM. Bye, guys. Have a good night.